because he's going to give us feedback. Watch this. They'll give us feedback. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You said it.
Yeah, I sure did. I said it. I said it more than once.
You sound like Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen?
No, that's not Steve McQueen. What? I didn't say that.
Basil Fawlty.
John Wayne.
John Wayne.
All right, I'm going to move this back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
We ready?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
Let's go.
Recording's going. Okay, cool.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers,
Bourbon and
Chris.
Pie.
Bourbon and Pie. Bourbon and Pie at 11:30 a.m.
That's right. And pie is right here. This is pie.
It's
Pie.
Safeway.
Pie.
Safeway's very finest cherry lattice pie.
It's Safeway. I don't know if it's Safeway brand though, but cheers.
It's not a Safeway brand?
Oh.
Was it a different brand? Cheers, man.
Oh,
Great to see you.
that's pretty good.
Mm.
Especially after a hike. So
Well,
we're here. We're here in Evergreen, Colorado.
Yeah.
We just had an amazing hike. Looked over this beautiful valley over here. Just stunning.
Took the dogs up the mountain.
Yeah. And we're in the home of my good friend and mentor and former boss, Ben Edwards, who has helped me a lot in my career.
Mm.
And it's great to have you. I'm glad you're doing this. And
Well, it's great for you to visit
yeah, I'm so glad to be here. This house is really cool.
all the way from San Jose.
Yeah. Well, I knew I was going to come up here one day, and this.
Well, you're welcome whenever you like to come.
We're going to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we'll definitely be back. We might be looking at places to stay close by. Who knows? But yeah. So this podcast, as you know what it's about. But this is about effective teams, effective people.
Yes.
What they do. This is like the non-management book of how people get things done. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Unmanagement.
Unmanagement.
How about that?
Non-management, like what I mean by that is, well, you and I have talked about this before. Like when the first time I talked to you, the first time I was introduced to you, we talked about how management needs to get out of the way.
Yes.
And how people need to be accountable and autonomous, and that's really important. Probably we'll touch on that. And so when I read these management books, it's like a one size fits all. And when you really look at it, you can't apply this one size fits all to everybody because you're you and you have different upbringing, different philosophy, different. Look at this. This is funny. It's like cats. Cats are just walking around.
I know.
So I do need to mention. Okay, so the house has 2 dogs, 3 cats, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and
3 horses, but not on the property.
3 horses.
Thank goodness.
Too.
I mean, I don't know if we could do a podcast being interrupted by a horse.
Well, knowing you guys, how you guys are so nice to animals, you guys would have those half doors, and the horses would be peeking their head in like throughout every part of the house,
contributing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're gonna go feed them, and
yeah.
So they would the head would be peeking in on the side over here or something. Oh, but so when we talked about that before, that those discussions and things I've been through and seen, and when I talk to people more and more, it's people have kind of figured out their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured out different ways to do things, and they're effective at it. Some people aren't so much effective, but I'm here to talk to people that are. And this is why I started this podcast, because I'm more interested in these traits and what people have and what they've done and their backgrounds and everything like that. So just going back a little bit on you.
Yeah.
And like where you came from and everything like that. Just maybe start with that and
well, I have a kind of a pretty eclectic background. I was born in LA, but my parents were both British, and my dad was a chemical engineer, and so grew up all over the place. A little like what you Americans call, although I am American as well, you call an army brat. It's like that kind of an upbringing. Yeah. So lived in the U.S. and the U.K. I spent quite a bit of my time and my childhood in in the Middle East, in Tehran, pre-revolutionary Tehran, and then Oman, which is on the Arabian Peninsula, east of there's a cat east of the United Arab Emirates, and then my career has been pretty eclectic as well. It's going to be just been a kind of series of different things, really, very different. I spent 14 years as a journalist and foreign correspondent. I was in London and Tokyo and New York, and then I got fed up with journalism, got kind of bored with it.
What was it with journalism what was it that got you out of it, or what was the bored part of it?
Fake news, man.
Fake news?
It was all fake news. Actually,
no, really?
Well, there was a story that I was researching for a long time on Enron. And my story is that Jeff Skilling, the CEO of Enron.
Jeff who? Jeff
Skilling. Was innocent of all charges.
The perils of Bourbon and Pie when you're eating pie and trying to say someone's name with S's.
So yeah, my story was that he was innocent of all the charges brought against him. And my publication at the time, The Economist, would not publish my story. There was no... And I got pretty upset about that because I felt I had a lot of compelling evidence that not only was he innocent, but the prosecution in the case was, which is the federal government, was engaging in a number of, abuses of its powers. And America's federal prosecutorial system has extraordinary discretionary powers. Chief among them, plea bargaining, right? Is where you swap your ability to be tried, which is your constitutional right, is to go and test this theory against you, that this criminal theory of your behavior. Well, that gets tested in court, except that 96% of all criminal cases don't reach court because people plead.
Right.
And they plead because they swap a potential 30-year, 40-year, 400-year prison sentence for something much, much smaller, right? I would say, on the whole, that is, I don't know, I feel that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of a form of extortion, if you like, or torture. So, anyway.
So did the government get to The Economist to have them not publish the story? Do you think?
No,
you think it got that?
No.
Okay.
No. I just dropped some pie.
That's why you have dogs.
Yes, exactly. The dogs again. No, it wasn't that. It was that they felt like I hadn't met some kind of level of evidence to be able to publish the story. I mean, at the time, there was a sort of extraordinary agreement amongst almost everyone that the guy was like the biggest, corporate criminal had ever lived. Right. So I was kind of fighting, a sort of an overwhelming consensus or mindset, I think, of which The Economist was just a part.
So that kind of disheartened you to have any passion about something, or what was it that?
Yeah, it was why
am I doing all this work?
The Economist in general, would publish some very what you might call controversial or non-mainstream or contrarian, I think is a good way of putting it. They would be willing to publish pretty much all that stuff. I was always interested in those stories, the ones that
against public opinion.
Yeah, because I wanted to make people think.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a kind of a public consensus on something, and I would often take the other side and write that and say, well, what about if we thought about it this way or looked at it this way? Or what evidence do we have for this? And so in general, that was why I spent 10 years at The Economist, and they were a wonderful employer, and they published almost everything I wrote. And a lot of it was like that.
Yeah.
And this one they wouldn't. I was like, well, if they're not going to publish this story, then I'm done. And I was kind of, bored with it as well. I've been doing it for 14, 15 years. And it was, I wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're doing something way different.
Well, since then, I did a whole number of things. I was a speechwriter. I went into marketing. I ran corporate marketing for IBM. I ran digital marketing for IBM. I was IBM's chief communications officer for a while, which is a very interesting and extremely challenging job. I did product management. I ran a digital media business. Met you at PayPal. That was, I guess, that was kind of a product management engineering gig, right? And now run my own company and have clients and consult all over the country with my clients. So it's another new chapter in this ever evolving saga.
Yeah. So you know, we talked about this before. You're a constant learner, and you know, I'm sure you've taken a lot of these writing skills, and and your business partner now have written some books, and you've been published more with him and stuff like that. So I know you've taken these skills and you've learned a lot more, and you're constantly doing that. When you're in these different roles that you've been in, have there been anything that you've taken with you in terms of I'll call it like your philosophy or belief system? Do you think it's really kind of solidified in some ways, or do you feel like it's evolving?
Well, I guess there's a kind of a what makes me, what motivates me, and what brings out the best in me, right? And so there's that question. I don't think that changes much. I feel like that has been, since I left journalism at least, although even actually when I was doing journalism, it's always been about people. That what really motivates me is understanding people. I kind of feel like people, they're like puzzles, and you know they're multi-layered and super interesting and have different experiences and you know radically different perspectives, which always you know interests me. How different people can look at the same thing and have a completely different view or even sense of reality, right, from the thing. And so that's what's always, you know, interested me. And then the latter part of my career, like the corporate career and the consulting, it's been focused on, I guess you could call it human potential, right? So how do we harness better human potential? And I feel like that is, we haven't even begun to understand how to do that as a society.
Okay, not as individuals, but human potential as a whole. I mean, or along the line.
Well, that's interesting, right? Yes. So, and I was thinking about this the other day. I'm actually giving a presentation, a speech to a bunch of people in New York next week, and the topic is growth. And then I was thinking about this book, The Growth Mindset, which I have to read because, you know, that's the topic of my speech really is growth. And I'm wondering whether, you know, the growth mindset, I don't know, I've got to read the book, but it sounds like it's something that it comes from the individual, right? It sounds like, well, you either have this growth mindset or you don't have this growth mindset. And then I think, well, all right, well, I'm listening to this and maybe I'm reading your list of things that, you know, there's a fixed mindset, right? Well, maybe I read this list and I'm like, oh, geez, I've got a fixed mindset. Well, what do you do about that? Do you kind of wake up in the morning and you go, okay, now I'm going to have a growth mindset, and now I don't really kind of buy into that. I feel like these things are much more about the environment in which people live and work, right? So, you know, and behavior is environmental, right? So it's a system of things around me that causes me to think and behave in a certain way. And if that is resulting in a fixed mindset, right, then we need to look at that environment and change things in that environment that's going to cause me to now start exploring and understanding and taking advantage of a growth mindset, right? It's not like an act of individual will that makes that happen. It's a combination of things in one's environment, right? We're incredibly sensitive as human beings to our environments, and so that's what I work on is the environment.
And when you say environment, you're speaking to physical and I've heard you say the word virtual environment. So first, first tell me your definition of virtual environment. What is
Well,
that?
when I talk about environment, I'm talking about anything that acts on me as an individual from outside,
Uh-huh.
right? So
Yeah.
that
So
could
your
be
group, the people you talk to.
that could be the people you interact with,
Yep.
right? And how that works out, and that could be your physical space,
Yeah.
right? Like the physical space we're sitting in now
Yeah.
is having influence on how we behave. You and I are in a living room kitchen here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If we were sat in a federal penitentiary in a cell
with guards looking over us,
I guess we would be behaving a little differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't be quite so loose and relaxed, maybe.
Right. Right.
Right? Or
and probably wouldn't be able to drink bourbon.
No bourbon would be allowed.
And
we'd have to smuggle it in.
Pie is a never pie because you could put knives in it and smuggle it in. That you could never do that.
So that's a kind of a physical environment thing, right? Yeah. So there's people, and then there's the physical environments, and then there are the sort of like the sort of questions of how we work, what you might call method or process, right? Those are environmental things, right? Because we get conditioned to those things, right? We get conditioned to, well, this is how we work, and this is how we do our work, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So that becomes an environmental thing. You talked about virtual. I would say, virtual environments are just kind of virtual extensions of those things. So we can have virtual physical space, right?
Yeah.
We hang out in Slack. That might be an example of that, and so on, right? Yeah.
Excuse me, real quick. Before I forget, hey, would you mind, taking a picture of us? So that I always forget to take a picture, and sometimes people take them with their phone, and it's perfect that I have the camera here. So.
Okay. Do we smile for that?
Oh, I don't know. Should we pretend we're engaged?
Stroke our chins.
Yeah. This is my thing. I do this a lot.
Okay, Ben, put your hand on the other side so I can see more of your face.
This side?
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah, I'm hiding.
Okay.
I can't do it.
Yeah, that's a good angle. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. All right, we have proof. We have to prove. There's evidence that we have to prove we're here. Otherwise, no one's gonna believe me because it's like a Martian thing. When aliens come, now we have proof. So make sure you download that right away before Ben destroys the evidence, the memory card. Boom, boom.
So
virtually, you're talking about Slack and other.
Yeah. So that's kind of that's sort of been my area of interest and exploration is how do we bring out extraordinary, and it's always extraordinary, human potential by adjusting and designing environments that are supportive of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for like 15 plus years now.
Yeah.
And it's never ceased to amaze me just what humans are capable of when you provide them with the right environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's now you're outside consultant and you come into companies and,
yes.
and so does the frustration increase when you don't have a lot of controls of some of that? When you have things where I know the look at your face is definitely not, but I do want to get an idea of that, what it looks like, when now you're in that consultative role, being internal. In our experience together, we didn't have a lot of control of the physical environment, but we had a lot of great plans and ideas, and we knew what we wanted. But the company has taken them 2 years to catch up, and the company is actually just now, 3 years later, or 4 years later, maybe catching up to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what kind of things do you experience now that is a little frustrating for you, where you have something that you feel like the environment is necessary, or it would make a huge play and change, and you can't make it happen?
Well, I don't think it's. I was kind of expecting that, right? That as a consultant, you're, on the one hand, you have the privilege of, looking more horizontally across multiple different clients and environments and industries, and so you learn, a lot, right? And that's been definitely true. But I had this sort of apprehension that I would get frustrated because I wouldn't be so effective, and actually that hasn't been true at all. That actually I don't really know. I don't think there's been any difference in my ability to be effective in this work as a consultant or as an internal leader, which is kind of strange.
Yeah,
right? When you think about it.
Yeah,
it's like,
it
well,
is.
wow, how is that true? I guess
It's also preconceived sometimes. So if you have an assumption, I do. As for my question, I have an assumption that the effectiveness would be less likely unless your task is exactly that, right? Say you've come in to just do an assessment and provide a recommendation, and
but my work is never that.
it's more.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't want to engage if all you want from me is an assessment.
Yeah.
Right. I bought that book you recommended, Humble Consulting.
Yeah.
Edgar Schein, and I've read the blurb on the back.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging because it sort of talks about we need humility as consultants, and we need to go in there, and we need a more. He talks about, on the blurb at least.
Yeah.
He talks about having a more intimate relationship with your client and being there for them, and sort of helping them through it all, right? Which is what I do. Is I want to be there and help them through these difficult changes that need to happen for them to become more effective, right? So it's kind of the same deal. And then you're always working by.
Oh wait, hold on. Pause 1 second here.
Oh, okay.
So hey, Louise and Hebe. So I just wanted you guys just to say hi because we are filming this and you're already in the video anyways.
Oh,
you're in the background.
They
You're
were
tiptoeing
like
around,
tiptoeing
and so it's okay. But I appreciate you trying to be quiet. Kelly's tiptoeing around. So when you walk by, just wave here, and then wait here. I'll show you. This is where. Oh, there. You got to duck down. You got to duck down. There you are. Say hi, Kelly. Here you are. This is what you got to do to get a podcast done in any situation. Right? So, so now it's okay for her to do the ice now because she knows this. All right, so take a little break. Take a little break. This is our break. I'll pause.
Break.
Pause. And we need an advertiser's pause anyway, so this is the advertiser's pause.
Okay.
Who's sponsoring this particular podcast?
Right now, just my wife.
A message from Kelly.
It's a Boom Boom executive producer. She's and the Bourbon and Pie apparel.
To lacrosse?
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Hebe, we can't see your face. You have to say hi. You got to go down. There you go. See? Yeah. Good luck in lacrosse.
Great trip back and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks. Oh yeah, we don't see it. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Nice to meet you.
Great time. Thank you. Oh, look, you're going to my legs.
I'll see you at the barn, babe. 5.
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock sharp with a present for Jean. That's the mission. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy.
We will.
Bye, Georgie.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, there's some in the fridge if you like.
Yeah. Put a piece in there.
Yeah. Where were we?
Humble Consulting with Ed and Edgar Schein, and what he was saying about what that meant to you. And
and then
and
I guess what I'm trying to do is help people reconceive or rethink things. A lot of the times, what I'm trying to do is that's like coaching, right? And that's a pretty subtle thing to do, right? And regardless of whether you're their boss or you're some outside consultant who they're working with, it's the same deal. It's just as difficult to try and persuade someone to look at something differently or work differently, right? In a way. Yeah. So I haven't found it any less rewarding or less effective. Yeah.
So and going back on that sort of like your belief system.
Yes.
So I got that you have there's change that you have. You don't see it difficult no matter where you are. What sort of other things do you feel are things that you brought with you through your learnings and your journey that you've just taken with you that you feel like are that play into your actions now and where you are now?
Yeah. Let's think. Well, I have a sort of a deepening appreciation for how difficult it is to change how people do work. And so, you could look at that at the team level and say, well, let's form and launch and make successful an effective team. And you can say, well, that's perhaps not that difficult, and perhaps it isn't, at least to begin with. But then the team, you then start thinking, well, who's the team interacting with? The team is interacting with their colleagues, right? Their managers, right? Their functional heads, their customers, their suppliers, right? And they have been working with some notion of how work gets done. They've all been working with what is now, from the team's perspective, a legacy notion of how the work gets done. But in order for the team to be sustainable in how it works, it has to change all of their ideas about how the work gets done too.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of this work that happens inside companies runs into this problem of we got to consider, the wider environment, and then the wider environment, and the wider environment, and we got to have a plan for changing all of those things, because a team's changed, but its customers haven't, and the customers are saying, no, we don't want you to work this way. That's not what they're literally saying, but effectively that's what they're saying is, no, we would like you to work the way you were working before, because that's how we're used to you working, and we are resisting the idea that you're going to work in a different way, right? Or the managers might, feel, no, I don't want the team working this way. I was very happy with the way it was before, and we want to do that, right? And so, yeah. I guess over the years, I've sort of come to appreciate how difficult it is to build a more holistic system that supports this kind of a change.
When we talk about that kind of change, there's traits that, with effective teams that have been, we hear psychological safety, structure, dependability, things like that. Are those things that you also look for with, when you come into these situations that you feel like that teams need to be aware of and empowered to do? As an example, I'm working from this notion that there's individuals who come into a job, but they really make it their own, and they do modifications. They might be told certain things, but they figured out something different to get it done a different way. And those are the kind of people that can really make things happen in an effective way, because they're really doing it to be effective, not in any other way other than to do that. There are people who operate by different motives, but I'm talking about, for the better good, right? Oh, come here. Did it stop the recording?
No, I think but he wants to.
He wants to, yeah.
He wants
to
stop that.
Yeah. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, so there's individuals who come in with a mindset that, okay, you guys do it that way, but I'm going to make it my own. So I'm asking you two things, really. Do you look for certain traits in teams that, psychological safety, structure, dependability, things like that? Or do you look at other things as well, like to make some change happen within companies that needs that?
Well, generally I'm looking to solve organizational problems, right? So the first thing I want to know is, well, what are the problems? What are the organizational problems? And, they're generally one of a number of things, right? But it could be around cycle times or time to market. We're not fast enough, or we're not agile enough, right, in terms of our cycle times. And then you ask, well, why might that be? And that might be because, we have too many layers of management, we're directing the work too much, we're siloed, right? There could be any number of different things happening there, right? There could be problems around engagement, right? A lot of companies and organizations suffer from poor employee engagement, and actually, I can be brought in to explicitly solve that problem. We take a pulse survey once a year, and our function is lagging the rest of the company. Our employees tell us that we're not innovative, we're not creative, they don't have permission to do things, right? Could be that kind of situation, right? It depends.
Yeah.
But I want to start there and say, well, what is ailing us here? And then ask, well, how do we then start putting in place a plan, right, for improving that situation? And that involves inevitably, back to my earlier point, it involves every layer of the organization, the individual, the team, the management, the leadership. All parts of the organization are inevitably and always required to change those things, because the source of those problems is the way all those layers of the organization interact with each other, right? There's no one sort of root cause or one source. It's not like, well, it's the way the teams behave, or it's not. It's this damn management piece, right? They're screwing everything up. It's inevitably and always the interaction of those things that causes these issues.
Yeah, there's also what happens is companies have been behaving a certain way that's been ineffective, and they've done it for long periods of time. And many people have called it out already about what they think those problems are, and sometimes they're right? They've lived it, they know it, they've seen it. And those people who are complaining a lot sometimes tend to be those people who are the biggest believers in the company because they care enough to want to try to do something about it, and they run into frustration. Do you ever see those kind of people when you come in and identify them as your heroes or your advocates and try to empower them? And because it seems to be those people can save you a lot of outside analysis, having someone come in and look at what the problems are when they're just going, I've been telling you that the whole time. So do you ever look at those kind of individuals?
Well, it's kind of interesting. There's this question of, do people recognize the problems inside companies? And I would say overwhelmingly yes, right? If I can come in and I can sit down and have an honest conversation with, and it's amazing what people will tell you as a consultant, but they're pretty damn honest, right? They'll just tell you, and so, one of my lines is, how is work going, right? And then people are like a little confused. I mean, in general, how is the work happening here? Is it good? Is it bad? And then I follow up, and people are like pausing. They're like, should I say something here? And then I'll follow up with something like, normally, I ask this question, and the answer I get is it's a complete clusterfuck. And, because that's generally the way work happens, and it's unfortunate but true. And then you see the ice breaks, and everyone goes, yeah, you're right. It's absolute clusterfuck here. And then people unburden themselves, right? It's chaotic, it's ad hoc, we don't have a process, we're like too many meetings, we got too much email, like the managers are crazy, these other teams are crazy, this department over here, they're crazy, right? And so it's just this general sense that, work could be going a hell of a lot better than it is. And we sort of pretend that we're all very professional and things are all buttoned up, and all of the kind of the corporate, language and all that stuff is, we're trained, highly trained professionals doing great work, but there's this sort of underlying reality that work's a complete mess. So I think like there's a general understanding of, especially when you talk to the teams actually trying to do the work. Now that may not be true of the managers and the leaders. They may be living in some alternate delusional reality up there, right? Because they're just not close to the work, which is another source of problems in and of itself, right? They just don't know. But in general, I think people who are actually doing the work or trying to get the work done have got a pretty good appreciation of whether it's going well or not and what the problems are. I think when it comes to change, though, right, are you actually willing to put yourself out there and try and change something,
Mm.
that's actually a very small set of people who are actually willing to risk themselves, right, to go do that. And those are the people who we need to find if we're going to at least start the process of change. We need to find those brave, or you might even call foolhardy souls, who are willing to, right, change something. Perhaps because, like you say, they're just deeply frustrated. It's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to act. Or perhaps just because they have courage, right? They're just naturally courageous people. Or perhaps just because they define themselves in that way. And so that's how they work, and right, that's how they think about what they do. But those are the people. Yeah, it's funny. It's like I have a client. So it's the typical pattern. We don't collaborate. There's all the values on the wall, right? Collaboration, innovation, integrity, trust.
Of the company lobby,
or
like
any
that.
wall of any company, you get the same damn values. It's all the things we don't have, right? Don't you think? It's like we went and did some research and we found out all the things we don't have as a company, and then we made them into a poster and called it our values.
I worked for a startup, and the VP of HR said, "I'll never work at a company who has their values in the lobby on the wall." She said, "I would never," and I don't know. I think it's probably along the same lines as what you're saying. It's like people need to live it rather than just show it.
Well, yeah, because it's like whoever made that poster, it's like job done. We've got our values now.
We got it.
Done.
All they got to do is read the poster.
It's in the lobby. It's got to be true.
Yeah, because it's so psychological. You look at it every day. Of course they're going to live that way.
This client I have, right, they have that same poster all over the place. And, the reality is the 180-degree opposite of that, right? And so we're working with them on trying to change things. And back to our earlier conversation about physical environment, one of the things we're doing is trying to get them out of their cubes. They literally have they're in cube caves, right? They're like in their own little cave, and they're all, if you read their, employee survey stuff, they're all complaining that they don't collaborate. I'm like, well, how on earth are you going to collaborate when you're in these individual caves, right? I don't understand how that is going to happen.
Okay.
So we try and get them out the caves, but then all hell breaks loose. It's like, no, don't take our caves away from us. We have to continue living in these caves.
Well, let's talk about that because in the neighborhood concept is a very popular concept that's coming in, and it has a combination of focus, time, collaboration, and all the different sort of environments needed, or situations, I guess you would say. I have a heart for the introverts, right? The introverts are the ones I focus on in my work and with what I do. And a lot of them need that deep, focused time. Look out, bud.
They need caves.
They need caves. So, and a lot of people do, because what a lot of us have to do is go back, decompress, like heads down sort of thing.
We all do,
right?
Yeah.
So,
but you're right, introverts need it.
So what's your answer though? So what's your answer to that? Like, so he wants not over the keyboard, dude. He wants to go around it. Oh my God.
He wants to
knock the camera. Yeah, there we go. Oh
no, he wants to sit in front of the camera.
He's in front of the camera now. Thanks, Boom Boom. She's grabbing him. He's like, wait, I'm on TV.
These cats,
I'm on TV.
They have an uncanny neck.
Oh, they know. It's like, oh, look, it didn't even. He put the camera at the better angle too. That's good job, cat.
Good job. There's another cat.
That cat was a videographer.
Overrun with
another
them.
life.
So my answer
is,
you know this, right? My answer is mixed.
Yeah.
It's like people have these, they set up these false dichotomies. This is a false dichotomy. Open space versus private space is a false dichotomy. We need both, right? So open space we need for collaboration and teamwork. I call that the default space of the modern corporation or the modern organization, because my belief is the fundamental unit of production is the team, and the team needs to be together, collaborating together. Literally, physically together is the ideal situation. They're around one table, a shared table, and they're working together as a team. However, like you point out, everyone on that team also needs private space, and introverts need it acutely because they need it to recharge, like physically. They get literally physically exhausted with open seating, right?
Yes.
So it's not like, this raging debate versus open space and privates and cubes or whatever. So no, teams need both.
Yeah.
Right. We need mixed space of so that when we come together as a team at prescribed moments for peak productivity and peak creativity.
Yeah.
And then we spend a lot of time also alone, right? And if we don't provide them that space in our organizations, people are going to find it. They need it. It's essential for them. Yeah. So they're going to find it, right? They're not going to come in, right? Or they'll go find some quiet corner somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, you can see the same debate about bourbon or pie too.
Bourbon or pie. It's not bourbon or pie,
it's
Chris.
Not, it's both. It's together.
That's a false dichotomy as well.
No, it's both. It is both. It's not false. It's real. It's happening now, and you're part of it. I'm going to glance at my questions really quick here. Sorry. After the cat knocked over hit my keyboard. So I like this question. It's simply, when have you failed successfully? When you had a plan didn't work, things fell apart, and then actually the peanut butter and chocolate came together and it turned out pretty good. So do you have any stories like that kind of made an impact on you? And
well, I tell one actually from our time together. It's a funny story, and so I talk a lot about diversity of teams. Yeah. And the importance of diversity. And so when I say that, I'm talking about all forms of diversity, right? And there are many, many different kind of sources of diversity, right? It could be gender, it could be like where you come from, it could be your politics, it could be any number of different dimensions. But what we're looking for is people who think differently from each other. Right, and so those sources of diversity are, predictors of thinking differently, if you like. Mm-hmm. So here was a funny one. Well, it's not very funny in the sense that it was a bit of a disaster for us. But if you remember, we built a team together that had the same personality type. Like everyone on the team had exactly the same.
And we did a Myers-Briggs, and we were
personality type.
We were.
And it was my personality and your personality type.
Funnily
enough,
right? Yeah.
We went and found people who, wow, that person's great. Right?
I don't know what it is, but I really like
that person. Somehow I click with them.
And and I, as I'm bringing people in, I'm going by a matrix that I used, for the different traits, knowledge, skills, habits, and behaviors. And I'm looking at these things when I'm like, okay, this is going to work, and I'm not even thinking at all about
personality
a mirroring thing, right?
Right.
At all.
No.
I'm thinking like,
it just shows you how blind you can be.
Really?
Right. I was totally blind to it as well until we actually literally took that Myers-Briggs test.
The group analysis.
And it came back. It was like, I think the HR guy who was helping us, Brett, was it?
Brett Gordon.
Brett said, I have never seen this before. This is remarkable.
We need some J's in here.
But just to follow up, it wasn't that funny in the sense that it led us to disaster, right? Really.
Yeah.
And the disaster was, our personality types were not very grounded in reality, right? It was dreamers and visionaries, and and then it kind of, I guess, reinforced itself into this sort of giant dreaming visionary activity, and we were so far away from the reality of our product and like our product being able to get delivered. There was just this enormous gulf,
a big gap.
We'd only been building the damn thing for like 3 months, and about a 6-month gulf had opened up in 3 months between where we were and where we thought we had dreamed ourselves to be. And that was a disaster, right, for us as a team.
Definitely.
Yeah, we never really quite recovered from it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But the fortunate thing was I learned to appreciate the value of personality diversity, which is not really a dimension of diversity I'd thought about before.
Yeah.
But then, if you remember, we then went on a concerted effort to find the S's. Right.
S's and J's.
S's and J's. We needed S's and J's.
Yeah.
J's to kind of like bring us to some kind of conclusion.
Yeah.
And S's to ground us in data. That's what we lacked, was any kind of grounding in the damn reality of the data.
Yes.
And so, and then, yes, so...
Yeah, you know what? In Myers-Briggs...
And we did. We recruited them. We got a much stronger team as a result.
Myers-Briggs, what does the S stand for? I can't never...
Sensing.
Sensing?
Sensing. So
Sensing
it's
and
like,
J is judging.
So it's like, you know, how am I going to start constructing some theory of reality? Am I going to...
Not perceiving.
Am I going to start in the clouds with some sort of metaphor or some sort of idea?
Yeah.
Or am I going to start with the data in front of me and I'm going to look at that, I'm going to say, this is what I know.
Yeah.
That's what an S does.
Yeah.
That's what we didn't do. It's like, this is what I know.
Oh. Excuse me. Important part. Let's take a bourbon break. I'm going to have another bourbon. You want a bourbon?
I'll take a little one.
We're going to take a little.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to get it? they're empty, but...
Here, let me...
Where's the bourbon?
It's just over here.
You know a sponsor could be Buffalo Trace because we're having Buffalo Trace today. So
How much longer are you guys going on?
we're only going to about 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes, and then we'll head out.
Yeah. Buffalo Trace.
Buffalo Trace, the sponsor of the bourbon.
Oh, Pookie wants some bourbon.
It's not good for her.
No.
Oh, because you're looking at me. Thank you.
You want an ice cube?
Yeah. You want one?
Yeah, give me an ice cube.
All right. All right. A couple more questions.
Then we'll wrap.
Yeah.
I think you can only fit one in there, man. There we go.
All right. I'm going to put a marker on this thing here. So Ben, check it out. When I'm talking, I could put this marker here, press this in. So in the recording, when I'm editing, I know like when we start, like I'm going to look for the marker, that's when we're going to restart, you know what I mean? Or I could just pause it right now and then keep going.
Oh, nice.
I could just pause it and then keep going. Yeah, so this thing's really easy.
Yeah, you've inspired me. I'm definitely going to get this set up.
The booklet's
something
intimidating.
like
The booklet is intimidating. There's a lot.
Oh, for the recorder?
For this. But, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
that.
That does stick with me as well.
Yeah, so it was a funny one, right? Never had happened to me before.
Yeah.
But it was funny. It's funny how you're blind to. I was blind to it, literally blind to it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing about diversity is, if you don't have diversity or the right kinds of diversity, you're literally blind to something. You don't see it, right? And so that's the value of the team, or one of the values of the team is like, a number of pairs of eyes there, and they're all looking at something differently.
Yeah, and we are also looking at the traits of a team that were important to us, that everybody contributed. Psychological safety, and we had some structure. We are group hiring. We were all agreeing on the next roles. We are all agreeing on how it should be structured, what the teams might look like. It was every person that got added was part of that conversation. Nothing was done in silos. So that was another philosophy we had, and we were doing that. It's just the type of people.
Yeah, we didn't have the right rule book for it.
What do you mean?
Well, we needed a rule book that said, well, along with these other kinds of diversity that we value, we also value,
Other traits.
Personality diversity.
Yeah, personality. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Because then we adjusted the rule book, and then we we came and recruited more people. Like Karen, right?
Yeah.
Karen she's a big ass, right? I mean,
yes. Definitely.
And that really balanced us out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we are, I'm going to go to the next question. So, actually, I'm going to go back to that because there's a story you told me that I think was in line with this, like failing forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the story where you didn't do any planning. You came in with IBM. You came into a building. You didn't have everything yet. It turned into something where everyone started creating the physical environment.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of feel like that's in line with kind of failing forward. That was an unplanned thing, right?
Well,
I mean, wasn't it like you guys came in and didn't think you
oh,
had to
wait.
create, build the furniture because you
Oh,
didn't have the furniture?
well, that was a slightly different story. It was definitely a failure, I guess, um, in the sense that. So here's the story. So we were opening it was called a design. We called it the design lab. It was basically an innovation kind of facility for IBM in Midtown Manhattan. And so it was 25,000 square feet. It was going to be 14 teams as we built it out. And my logistics had failed me, and we were flying. The teams already mostly existed, but they were very distributed, and so there was this sort of question about how we were going to handle that. And in the end, we just gave them time to sort of either opt into moving across the country into Manhattan area, or going to find something else to do. But that's what we were after, was physically co-located, dedicated teams, and which is a foundation for me in pretty much all of my advice and work with people.
Right.
And so we flew in like 80 people from all over the country, and actually from outside the country as well. And unfortunately, due to logistical errors and unfortunate circumstances, the furniture hadn't arrived. So they all arrived, but there was no tables or chairs. But the team rallied and built its own furniture. We basically raided dusty old IBM out of date corporate office parks, and got chairs, and then we built tables. We literally built the tables out of table legs and plywood boards, and spent like a few days doing that. And it struck me.
So you had saws and hammer, like you guys were building it. Like you had to go to Home Depot or just like right.
Yeah, that's where we got the legs from, was Home Depot.
Yeah.
And that has become a principle of mine now, which I would love to be able to pursue with a client. I have a dream of basically part of team formation is we literally build our own space. So ideally, what I would like to do is help a team, and we give them a kit of parts, right? And I found these furniture companies, these open source furniture companies
that are pieces, and then they just they will assemble together. They're kits.
No, they're kits, is what they are.
Yeah.
So basically, the designs are open sourced, and so they're flat packed furniture. They're made out of plywood, right? Or they could be coated, laminated plywood. So you can have white laminated plywood, that sort of thing. And then it's a design that gets downloaded to a local manufacturer who has a CNC router. So CNC router is just what a router is? It's So it's like a router that cuts the shapes out of like these 4x6 plywood sheets, and then the CNC bit is just computer numerical control. So it just is run on software. It's like a 3D printer, except for plywood sheets, right? And so you download the software from the internet, you print, you cut out the plywood, and then you ship them, locally. Right? It ought to actually totally revolutionize the office furniture supply chain, right? Because that is like, it gets made in China and shipped, if you look at things like Steelcase, it's very high quality furniture. But to me, the advantage is, the teams assemble it on site. So you give them a kit of parts, you say, what would you like?
Yeah.
Right? They'll say, we'd like, 6 tables, and we'd like, these cubbies for our stuff. We'd like a drawers each. We'd like some whiteboards. And you say, okay, we'll order all that stuff for you. It's going to arrive on site here. Here's your space. Go build it and arrange it how you want. And to me, that's like, there's no better way. I don't think we mentioned this yet, but all the literature and all the science says autonomy, right? And this is what I'm doing here. This is a ritual that is about signaling permission and giving, in a very concrete way, helping people understand their autonomy as a team, which is, extends to design and construction of their physical environment.
It also lends itself really strongly a lot of data that the strongest teams are those teams that go through something together. When
it's a little rite of
a
passage.
rowing team has, there's a lot of data on this when they've witnessed some tragedy or they've overcome something, or there's
I'm sure we wouldn't have been that strong as a team if we hadn't had that disaster and we were able to rebuild ourselves and overcome it.
Exactly, and we're really close still. We still are in contact with each other. So, and it's it's been a few years now. So and so there's a lot of that's built into that model that you just talked about, because you've been to offsites where you do a project together and then you remember some of these people. It's like 4 or 5 people that you guys built a bicycle together or something. And there's that bond, right? It was short-lived, but what you're talking about is something that really plays into that psychology. Like, we did this together, and
you're making your own story together, right? That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
That also, that is a source and a foundation of effective teams.
Yeah, and the strongest ones were military, of course.
Well, they do that all the time.
Extreme. It's the extreme stuff
they've
been through together.
These band of brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Right. They build these things. That's how they know how to build effective teams.
Yeah.
They got to withstand the rigors of combat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's always together as one. There's definitely a lot of that built into their whole.
They also have a pretty cool. At least the U.S. military has a pretty cool doctrines around team autonomy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, have we talked about this? Commander's intent?
Yeah.
Commander's intent, right? Yeah. So, to me, commander's intent is a perfect illustration of how a leader can create autonomous teams, right? Which is, I'm going to clarify for you my intent for you guys. What is it I would like you to do? Yeah. I would like you to take that hill. That is my intent. Right, is for you to take that hill, right? Now, what happens then? So we do a plan for how we're going to take the hill, but, our plan didn't take account of the following machine gun nests and also the terrain and the fact that it had been raining the night before, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And our plan, as some wise person said, was it Eisenhower? Doesn't survive first contact with the enemy. The plan does not survive first contact with the enemy. Right? So what do we do now? Well, what was the commander's intent? Take that hill. All right, so now we got to improvise, right, and find a way up the hill. Mm-hmm. But that commander's intent is, if you like, what allows the team to be autonomous. If there is no clear intent from the commander, what do we do now? Well, shit, I don't even know what the commander wanted. Right. I guess we just wait for some orders. Yeah. Right. I mean, how can we be autonomous if we don't know the purpose, right? And a lot of companies are not good at this, right? Right. They're not good on both ways. They're overly directive, right? So they want to micromanage you up the hill while
prescriptive.
Yes, another great word for it. They're overly prescriptive, so they want to micromanage your way through the machine gun nests. Right, where their asses aren't getting shot off, right? Or they're unable to express their true intent, right? Mm-hmm. So the teams aren't given that higher level, right, goal or mission. They're told, no, just do this work here, and keep quiet, and we'll give you some more. Yeah,
I like that, and I love that whole model too. And when you told me that story, I wanted to do that, and I felt like, I was empowered. Of course, getting beaten down by infrastructure, facility, red tape, and all this other stuff you got to deal with. You can't do that, and why not? But it's it was an idea that I really liked for that same reason. It's like, well, we could create our own environment, and at IDEO they did that years ago. And there's a DC-10 wing inside.
The whole thing about D-School, right? That was the whole piece of it. D-School is really interesting in the sense that it's another. There's this great book called Make Space, which gives you a whole bunch of patterns around creating space, physical space, and furniture, and all that stuff. But also it gives you a little bit of backstory about the D-School. It was written by those guys.
D-School, a design school? Is that
D-School is Stanford University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess D stands for design.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it
Yeah,
does.
and IDEO, all those
Yeah,
guys
they
are
all
from
came out of
Stanford.
that culture, and
Yeah.
they were part of that, right?
Yeah.
But this book talks a little bit about how that whole D-school physical space kind of culture arose, and it was purely out of accident that the Stanford were unable to give them a permanent space. They had to keep moving, and they had to keep reinventing their space, right? And so as they did that, they suddenly realized, oh, this isn't a bug, this is a feature. You know, it's actually to have creative teams, to have teams that can adapt and learn and create and evolve, right?
Yeah.
Actually, to have space that does the same thing basically supports and encourages that whole kind of mindset and culture. So, you know, it's just a kind of interesting accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was kind of like, that to me is the ideal thing is, you know, if you remember our requirements that you were talking about, it was like, they were pretty simple. It was like, we would like furniture that is not nailed to the floor.
Yeah.
And we'd like whiteboards that can be on wheels that can move. And that was it.
Yeah.
And that then allows for, right, a constant reconfiguring of the space.
Yeah.
But our dear employers were unable to help us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's interesting how companies look at it. I look at it from my background in packaging, and so when I was the packaging manager at an electronics company, it was the Palm, and we tried to do a lot of innovative things, and we did, but early on it was almost impossible. At the same time, you know, working through supply chain and materials and all this stuff like that, people are like, well, how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost? So I understand that, but meanwhile, VPs are putting the concepts of the iPod or the Mini or whatever it was at the time, and their packaging was completely innovative, completely different. They completely renovated, and to this day affect how packaging is done, and you know, with electronics, you know, and they would say, do this. And I would say, I would love your help. How can you help me? Because I've been trying, you know. And and is the approach, right? So the approach was let's first look at cost. Let's look at that material. How much is it going to cost? Well, you don't know until the whole thing's put together, and you start with an experience, and so no one looks at an experience; they just look at cost.
Right.
And so similarly, it was the same way the facilities looked at it. It's like, you know, there is standards for electricity where that goes, which I understand. There's standards for safety. I totally understand. But nobody was going like, wait, what? The space that these guys spend most of their lives, more than with their families, has to be a certain way, and they do not have a say. You know, and to just look at it like, you know, you just go, well, wait, like, but these guys shouldn't they enjoy?
It kind of goes back to this, yeah, I know. It kind of goes back to this notion of, like, how do we conceive of the work, right? I mean, you and I might violently agree, and we do, right, on the work, how the work happens. The work happens in these small, empowered, creative, dynamic teams, right, that have everything they need, that are supported by their management chains, who focus on, you know, identifying and removing their blockers and their impediments. This is, like, for us, so self-evident that, you know, it sometimes feels painful explaining to people, but other people have very, very different ideas, conceive of the work in very different ways, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're almost like talking past each other. No, work happens like as a person. They sit at their serial number at their cube. They open up their workstation and they work quietly doing that work. And like, no, that's not how it happens. At least not how the most valuable work happens, and the problem-solving work happens, which is where we need to be focused. But I think that's part of the problem, right? Is that, you know, a lot of us have, I would call, very outdated ideas about how the work happens. And by the way, those ideas have been in existence for a very, very, very long period of time. And I thought like, I originally thought I had this idea that it was basically industrial, post-industrial thing, right? The industrial age wanted this kind of, you know, hyper-specialized, highly obedient, instruction following, you know, drone, if you like. And I'm kind of, you know, caricaturing it a little bit, but basically that's what the factory needed.
Yeah.
Right, was sort of reliability and repeatability, right?
Yeah.
And this post-industrial age needs completely different things like problem solving and creativity and initiative and innovation and adaptability and resilience, and right, you know, because our environment's changed and how values created has changed, and a lot of that industrial age stuff has been or is being automated, right? But then I thought, well, actually, and I've been reading about this, actually that obedience, that requirement for obedience actually started with the advent of agriculture, which is thousands of years before Christ, right? That, you know, if you think about agriculture, right, compared to nomadic hunter-gathering societies that were in existence before agriculture, right? Agriculture requires, you know, it's a very, very low tolerance for risk, right? You can't experiment with the crops because you will die, right? Because you don't feed anyone, and very, very high obedience, and right, we're following instructions, and right, and I'm thinking, yeah, this explains it to me, is that the world of work for thousands of years has been about this obedience and about following instruction, you know, low risk, fear kind of, you know, dominated environment.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're straining to kind of break away from that, and for good reason, right? That you don't just easily discard thousands of years of human culture.
Yeah.
You know, interestingly, hunter-gatherers are kind of a type of culture we're looking for, right? They were kind of the original knowledge workers, right? They had to have and possess in their heads a whole ton of knowledge about their environments, about how, you know, the animals they were tracking behaved, how they could catch them, kill them, right? They had made their own tools, right? You know, we need to get back there.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's these things that we've learned from our past, things that we've learned in school, and things that we've, right, like all these things.
So school, right? School is a perfect example of the.
Always outdated. It's always outdated.
Conditions us for this world of obedience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
I can't explain it any other way. It's certainly not there for learning.
I tell you what, I had a constant battle with the chair of the advertising department at school where I went, and it was because they were teaching from their experiences from advertising campaigns in the 60s and 70s, and I'm reading Wall Street Journal business part, and I'm reading about innovation and all kinds of things with market research and stuff, and every time I bring it up to them, they just diss it. It was the Gleam toothpaste campaign of 1960, you know, and it was like, I can't stand this. Let's talk about today. It doesn't work that way. You know, it's like I had that in school, and I fought that. I have two more questions. So the one question I love to ask people is, what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself? And like much younger.
Much younger.
Younger version could be last year, I guess. But like, you know, pick a time and what advice would that be?
I mean, it's an interesting question because I feel like we are who we are through different periods of our lives. And so when I look at my younger self, I could be, oh my God, dude, really? That would be one reaction.
Was that the advice?
That would be one reaction, would be really, I mean, come on.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And so, you know, and this is the arrogance I had, and, you know, and like, I thought I knew it all. But then on the other hand, you know, I'm like, well, now you're just an old man. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, the advice I would give, I would be tempted to give, would be advice that only a 49-year-old could actually receive.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even be appropriate for a 20-something-year-old.
But okay, so then if you had to go back and shake the shit out of the younger version of yourself and give them advice, what would it be? You know, and go like, you're gonna have to listen to me. I know you're not really gonna listen to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like more and more the value that or the way I want to spend my time is building and enjoying relationships with people. And so that's what really matters to me. And I don't think I prioritized that in my 20s.
That's good.
I was after other things, fame and glory and, career. But then, again, I would say like, okay, but you had all those things. So now you have the luxury of looking back and saying, no, you shouldn't have prioritized that. You should have prioritized this. So, in some ways, I'm here because I was there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You had to go through that.
Yeah. Every step has another step.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but yet I think that if I could have persuaded myself to, prioritize that more.
Yeah.
I think, that to me is, what's valuable.
Yeah. No, I like
the
that.
other thing is I wish I had discovered meditation a little earlier.
Yes. I'm with you on that one.
I only started when I was like 47. So I've been meditating, and I do it a lot now. Like, 30 minutes to an hour every day. Yeah. And it's just transformed me. Yeah. So profoundly. I wish I'd discovered that earlier.
Yeah. No, that's good. I would definitely do that one too.
You would?
Yeah, I would go back and tell myself that one as well.
But then would your earlier self listen?
Probably.
How would you persuade them?
With the way I think I've always been is, and my wife could probably kind of confirm this, is that I would go, okay, maybe. But I always process it, and it takes me like a week or a couple days, and then I come back and go, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. And she does it all the time to me, and she suggests things like, oh, nope. And then I go, that was a good idea actually. So I usually kind of do that. And I think I did more of that when I was younger. So I got another question. So the next question is, I kind of like this question because it's kind of fun, and this is a fun question. It's like, fantasy football. Fantasy football, you pick all your favorite players from multiple teams. If you had your own company, which you do actually, so now you have your own company. Yeah. And if you could pick your fantasy team, picking anybody from history, alive or dead, or even fictional characters, cartoons, Marvel comics, whatever it is, from books. If you come up with your fantasy team for your company, and maybe it's a different kind of company, and if you want to invent that company right now, go ahead. But who would those characters be? Who would you want in your presence?
I kind of reject that whole idea for some reason. That was my first thought.
Why do you reject it?
I'll tell you what. So Toyota.
It's just a fun question. What do you mean reject it?
But because I guess I don't think that way, or even. So here's what I like to do: is I like to take ordinary people and help them become extraordinary. That's maybe why I'm like.
Oh yeah.
I think Toyota is quoted on this, right? It's like they have this, it's back to this thing about environment and systems, right? It's like
you mean the Toyota's lean model? You mean that model?
Yeah, the Toyota production system, the Toyota Way, right? Which is a kind of a complete system of management, from the person working on the line through to the chairman of the company, right?
And everybody has control of the production line. Everyone can stop it. You mean like that?
That's one of the principles. It's not just a principle; they act on it every day. Is that a person working on the production line has as much authority as the chairman to change the process, right? Which kind of stems from this notion that the people doing the work are the ones who are best able to describe how it should be done. Mm-hmm. Kind of obvious, right? When you think about it. But that's their philosophy: is we take ordinary people and we help them become extraordinary through our system. So that's kind of my philosophy as well.
Yeah.
I'd rather, for me, like the most gratification I've ever had in my career is when I've taken people who are struggling or disillusioned or burnt out or otherwise not engaged, and be able through these environmental things, right, to help them, right, find motivation and energy and direction and purpose, right?
Yeah.
Those things are the most rewarding to me. So I don't know about these famous people from the past. It's like, I don't know what they'd be like.
Yeah, and you did tell me something before, and it's along the lines of I'd rather take a group of C students rather than a couple of A top-notch A+ students.
Yeah. Like this back to this idea of human potential, right? It's like, every human has the most extraordinary potential, and it's just about figuring out how to unlock it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again, Ben.
Thanks, man.
I really appreciate it.
That was fun. Thanks for the Bourbon and Pie.
Yeah. Thanks for the use of your house.
You're welcome.
The great view.
And all those cats.
Yeah.
You're going to have to edit out.
Yeah. I don't even know. Did they stop recording? I don't even know if they did. I don't even know. Well, anyways. So cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks.
All right. Boom, boom.
What's the weather situation?
Yeah. So in the recording, when I'm editing, I edit for very, very, very long period of time.
Yeah, it seems like it's getting a little chilly.
Little chilly?
Look at this one.
What's this? Uh-oh. I should stop this.